Before recording MIDI, you'll want to check the MIDI connections with your keyboard, load a sound, and set a tempo. So let's walk through those steps. I want to make sure that I've got signal from my MIDI keyboard. If I press a key on my MIDI keyboard, I should see this button up in the upper right-hand corner of Ableton light up. So let me press a key here. That's looking good. Now, if yours is not responding as mine is, you'll want to go into Preferences, which on a Mac is in the Live menu, Preferences. That'll be on the Options menu on a PC. And select the MIDI Sync tab. And make sure that the button under the Track column is enabled for your device. That allows you to send and receive MIDI messages. Okay, let's close out of there. Now we can load a preset or a device to this track by going over into our browser. I've got the sound category chosen, and I'm going to go into the pad category and come down here and just grab something like the snow pad. And I'm going to drop that on an available MIDI track. I can also drop it over here in the drop files area, or if I've got a MIDI track selected, I can also drop it down here in the instrument area. And that will load that. And if I press a key on my keyboard, I should hear sound. So that's working. Now, let me just point out a couple things. Live automatically defaults to having all inputs set here in the MIDI input chooser. So the first button here is actually for the device that MIDI signal is coming through. And if you choose all devices or all instruments, it will allow any MIDI signal that's reaching the system to come onto this track. If I click on that, you can see that there are some other options here. It looks like I've got an external MIDI input on my keyboard that I could have chosen. And there's some other options here. But the only reason that you would really worry about this is if you were trying to record two MIDI tracks at the same time and you were trying to use two different MIDI controllers. For example, a drum machine and a keyboard. In this case, I'm only trying to record onto one track, so I don't really care where the MIDI signal is coming from as long as it gets there. The second chooser here allows us to choose a specific MIDI channel. And if I click that, you can see that I've got channels 1 through 16. Again, I'm only trying to record one signal, so I really don't care what channel it's arriving on. Any channel is good enough, so I'll choose all channels. Now, in monitoring this particular synth, as soon as I drop the preset on the track, you notice that the track was record enabled and we were able to hear sound. Now, at a later point, the track might be disabled, and if I play the keyboard, I don't hear anything. I saw the MIDI signal, but I didn't hear anything. So I can either re-enable the record button on the track, or I can go up into the monitor section and I can change the option there. So currently we're in auto monitoring, which is going to allow me to monitor signal from any clips that are on the track. So if I click a launch button and play a clip, we'll hear sound. If I want to hear the input of a synth without being in record enable, I need to click the in button to go into input monitoring, which is going to allow me to hear signal from a MIDI controller that is sending MIDI signal onto the track and through the virtual instrument that's loaded on the track. On an audio track, if we go into input monitoring, we'll be able to hear audio signal from a microphone that's plugged into your interface without being in record enable. And then off allows us to just turn the track off for monitoring and not hear anything. In most cases, though, you just need to be in auto and make sure that you're record enabled. I'll go ahead and check that real quick. Okay, I've got sound again. And as you're working, if you were not seeing the MIDI inputs and outputs in the monitor section as I was showing you that, remember that you can enable that area by clicking on the Show Hide button for the I/O over there, and you can see that that closes and opens that particular area of the session view. So at this point, I might want to set a tempo that I'm going to record at. Now maybe the song's going to be at 145.47. That's an exact tempo. But I might not be able to play that fast. So I'm going to click up in that area, and I can either scroll up or down to set the tempo, or I can type a value. I'm going to go all the way down to 100 BPM because I'm kind of a mediocre keyboard player. Another way you could set that tempo would be to click on the tap button over here. And as you click it successively, Live will measure the distance between your taps and set the tempo accordingly. So for example, see that adjusting the tempo. I can also set the meter by clicking in this field, but I'm also going to want to set the metronome to play, so I'll enable the metronome button, and then I'm going to want to enable a count off. So let me click here, and it looks like it's currently set at 1 bar, and that can also be set at 2 or 4 bars or at nothing. So as you can see, there are several steps to preparing to record MIDI, and if you encounter problems, you can troubleshoot through the steps we just discussed.